The small town of Greenridge, nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests, had always been a quiet, unassuming place. Known for its annual pumpkin festival and its quaint diner run by an elderly couple, Greenridge seemed untouched by the chaos of the wider world. That was until the sky lit up with streaks of light one crisp autumn evening, and the hum of an otherworldly force brought the town to a standstill. Among the residents, Emma Caldwell stood out. A sharp-witted astrophysicist turned high school science teacher, Emma had moved back to Greenridge after her research funding dried up. She had traded stargazing for lecturing teenagers about Newton's laws, a job she had grown to enjoy despite its humbling nature. Her unlikely companion in the unfolding events was Carter Blake, a sarcastic mechanic with a knack for improvisation and a reputation for fixing anything, from cars to ancient toasters. Emma was in her backyard, her telescope pointed at the night sky. She was showing her niece, Ellie, how to identify constellations. Ellie, an inquisitive 11-year-old with a penchant for asking endless questions, squinted through the eyepiece. "Why does it look like the stars are moving?" Ellie asked, her tone more curious than alarmed. Emma leaned over, frowning. The stars weren't supposed to move like that, at least not in such an erratic pattern. She checked her phone for satellite activity, but there was no explanation. As she returned to the telescope, a blinding flash lit up the night, followed by a low rumble that seemed to come from deep underground. In the town square, Carter was locking up his workshop when the same flash illuminated the streets. He froze, the hairs on his arms standing on end. Around him, streetlights flickered, and an eerie silence fell over the town. A few seconds later, a sharp tremor shook the ground, knocking over trash cans and setting off car alarms. The entire town gathered in the square, murmuring nervously. Emma arrived with Ellie in tow, her telescope bag slung over her shoulder. Carter, who had always found Emma's scientific demeanor amusing, raised an eyebrow at her. "Any chance this is one of those meteor showers you like talking about?" he quipped. Emma ignored him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. In the distance, a massive, metallic object descended through the clouds, glowing with an ominous green hue. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its surface was smooth yet covered in shifting patterns that seemed alive. The object landed just outside the town, shaking the ground once more. The mayor, a perpetually flustered man named Harold Grayson, stepped forward. "Everyone, remain calm. It's probably a weather balloon or something," he stammered, clearly out of his depth. Emma couldn't help herself. "That's no weather balloon," she muttered. Before anyone could respond, the object emitted a low hum, and a beam of light shot into the sky. A holographic map of Earth appeared above it, with pulsating red markers spreading across the continents. The crowd gasped. Emma's heart sank. This wasn't just a random event. It was coordinated. The hum intensified, and smaller drones began to emerge from the object, hovering ominously. They looked like metallic insects, their surfaces glinting in the moonlight. The crowd began to scatter in panic as the drones advanced, scanning the area with beams of light. Carter grabbed Emma's arm. "We need to get out of here. Now. I need to see what they're doing," Emma replied, her scientific curiosity battling her survival instincts. "You're kidding, right?" Carter shot back. "No. If we don't understand what's happening, how can we stop it?" Their argument was cut short when one of the drones turned toward them, its beam locking onto their position. Carter cursed under his breath and pulled Emma behind a nearby car as the drone fired a pulse of energy, shattering a lamppost. The two managed to escape to Carter's workshop, where they found Ellie hiding under a workbench. Carter slammed the door shut and barricaded it with whatever he could find. Emma, meanwhile, rummaged through the shelves, looking for anything that might help them understand the situation. "What are you doing?" Carter asked, exasperated. "There has to be a way to analyze their signals," Emma said, her mind racing. Carter rolled his eyes. "Yeah, sure, because I keep an alien signal analyzer right next to my socket wrenches." Emma ignored him, her eyes lighting up when she spotted an old ham radio in the corner. She hurried over, plugging it in and fiddling with the dials. Static filled the room, but amidst the noise, a pattern emerged, a sequence of beeps and hums. "This isn't random," Emma muttered. "It's a code." Ellie, peeking out from under the workbench, asked, "What kind of code?" Emma glanced at her niece, then at Carter. "If I can decode this, we might figure out what they're planning." Outside, the drones continued their sweep of the town, capturing anyone who didn't escape in time. The metallic object in the distance began to shift, expanding into a towering spire that pulsed with energy. Carter looked out the window, his jaw tightening. "Whatever you're doing, do it fast. They're not going to wait around for us to figure this out." The stakes were clear. This was no mere visitation. The aliens had a plan, and if Emma and Carter didn't act quickly, Greenridge, and possibly the entire planet, was doomed. The silence of Greenridge was shattered by the mechanical whirring of alien drones patrolling the streets. Those who hadn't managed to escape were either captured or hiding in basements and attics, their breaths held as the invaders methodically swept the area. The towering alien spire outside the town now loomed like a malevolent sentinel, its pulsating green energy resonating with a deep, otherworldly hum. Inside Carter's workshop, Emma and Carter stood over the old ham radio Emma had salvaged, their faces illuminated by its faint glow. Ellie, perched on a stack of tires, clutched a flashlight and kept a wary eye on the boarded-up windows. The rhythmic beeping Emma had deciphered earlier echoed through the room. She adjusted the dials with meticulous precision, her brow furrowed. "This is definitely a transmission," she muttered. Carter leaned over her shoulder. "Great. What's it saying? We come in peace?" "Because their drones say otherwise." Emma shot him a glare. "It's a sequence, a data packet. But it's incomplete. If I can figure out the rest, we might understand what they're after." Ellie's small voice cut through the tension. "What if they're trying to talk to us?" Emma paused. "It's possible. Or it could be a signal to coordinate their next move." Before Carter could respond, the room shook violently. Tools clattered to the floor, and a deep, metallic roar reverberated from the spire. Ellie shrieked, clinging to Carter's arm. "What now?" Carter growled, peering through a crack in the boarded window. His expression darkened. "You're not going to like this." Emma joined him and gasped. The spire had transformed, sprouting massive, spindly legs that anchored it deeper into the earth. Alien glyphs glowed brighter along its surface, and from its base emerged larger drones, each equipped with ominous-looking appendages. "They're digging," Emma whispered. "Digging for what?" Carter asked. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it can't be good." Emma's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from her old research colleague, Dr. Alex Ramirez, who had been monitoring global developments from a remote bunker. "Alex. Emma, I hope you're alive. These spires are appearing everywhere. Satellite images show massive energy surges underground. They're looking for something. Stay safe and keep me updated." Emma's blood ran cold. She relayed the message to Carter, who ran a hand through his hair. "So, it's not just us. Great. Any brilliant ideas, Professor?" Emma's mind raced. "If they're digging, they might be after resources, or something buried here long before humans existed. Either way, we need to stop them. And how do you suggest we do that?" Carter gestured to the spire. "It's a little out of our league." Ellie, who had been quietly observing, piped up. "What about the old mine?" Both adults turned to her. "The abandoned mine outside town," Ellie explained. "Grandpa used to say there were explosives left down there when they shut it down." Emma's eyes lit up. "That's not a bad idea." Carter crossed his arms. "You're talking about blowing up an alien spire the size of a skyscraper with dynamite from the 1950s. Do you hear how crazy that sounds? Do you have a better plan?" Emma shot back. Carter opened his mouth to argue but thought better of it. "Fine. Let's say we go with this. How do we get to the mine without being turned into Swiss cheese by those things?" He gestured toward the drones outside. Emma thought for a moment, then grabbed a blueprint of the town from Carter's desk. "There's a storm drain that runs under the square. If we can access it, we'll avoid most of the drones. Most, Carter repeated with a grimace. I love those odds. With the plan in place, the trio gathered supplies, flashlights, a crowbar, and a rusty old shotgun Carter kept for emergencies. Ellie protested when Emma tried to leave her behind, insisting she could help. Ellie, this isn't a game, Emma said. I know that, Ellie replied fiercely. But you need me. I know the mine better than anyone. Carter shrugged. Kid's got a point. Reluctantly, Emma agreed, and they slipped out of the workshop under cover of darkness. The storm drain was located near the edge of town, partially obscured by overgrown bushes. Carter pried the grate open, and they descended into the damp, narrow tunnel. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. Emma led the way, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I never thought I'd miss the fresh air of Greenridge, Carter muttered. As they crawled through the tunnel, the hum of the spire grew louder, reverberating through the ground. Occasionally, they heard the metallic clank of a drone passing overhead, and each time, they froze, holding their breath until the sound faded. Eventually, they emerged near the outskirts of town, where the mine entrance loomed ahead. Overgrown with weeds and rusted shut, it looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Carter took the crowbar and went to work on the gate. If I get tetanus from this, I'm blaming you, he grumbled. Inside, the mine was a labyrinth of narrow passages and crumbling supports. Ellie took the lead, her memory guiding them to a storage room where boxes of old explosives were stacked haphazardly. Emma inspected the boxes. Some of these might still be viable, but we'll need to be careful. Carter smirked. Careful? That's your plan? Before Emma could retort, a distant noise froze them in their tracks. The unmistakable sound of metallic footsteps echoed through the tunnels. They're here, Ellie whispered. Emma's heart pounded. How did they find us? Carter grabbed the shotgun and motioned for them to move. Doesn't matter. We need to get out of here. They hurried back the way they came, carrying as many explosives as they could manage. The drones were relentless, their beams of light cutting through the darkness as they pursued the group. At one point, a drone cornered them in a narrow passage. Carter fired the shotgun, the blast echoing through the tunnels, and the drone collapsed in a shower of sparks. Good thing I brought this, he said with a grin. They finally emerged from the mine and made their way toward the spire, using the forest for cover. The structure towered above them, its alien glyphs pulsating with energy. Emma set up the explosives at the base, her hands trembling as she worked. This has to work, she muttered. Carter stood guard, keeping an eye on the approaching drones. No pressure or anything, he called over his shoulder. Ellie helped Emma connect the detonator, her small hands surprisingly steady. As the drones closed in, Emma took a deep breath and pressed the button. The ground shook as the explosives detonated, and the spire began to collapse, its energy surges growing erratic. But the victory was short-lived. From the wreckage of the spire, a massive, serpent-like alien emerged, its glowing eyes fixed on the trio. Of course there's a boss level, Carter muttered. The fight was far from over. The forest was alive with alien sounds, whirring, clicking, and a faint hum emanating from the glowing spire. As the survivors finalized their preparations, tension gripped them like a vice. The air felt charged, almost electric, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The group huddled around a rough diagram marked out in the dirt. Dr. Elaine Carter pointed at the spire. We detonate these charges at the base and sever its energy conduit. If this thing goes offline, it could cause a chain reaction in their terraforming network. But we only have one shot, interjected Derek Hale, tightening his grip on his shotgun. If we screw this up, we're toast. Those drones will be on us in seconds. Leah, the young tech prodigy, adjusted her glasses. I've rigged a remote link to the spire's energy nodes. If I can sync it with the explosives, we'll have a delayed blast, enough time to escape. Elaine nodded, her expression grim. Good. But we need a distraction to draw the drones away. I'll handle that, Derek volunteered. I've faced worse odds before. The group exchanged a brief, silent look. They knew this was likely a one-way mission. The distraction. Derek crept through the dense underbrush, his breathing steady despite the rising adrenaline. He carried a flare gun, a small pack of fireworks, and his shotgun slung over his shoulder. He crouched near a clearing, just a few hundred meters from the spire, and fired the flare into the air. The flare hissed and burst into a brilliant crimson bloom, illuminating the area like an ominous sunrise. Alien drones instantly swarmed toward the source, their metallic forms glinting in the eerie light. Derek lit the fireworks, tossing them in every direction. Explosions of color and sound erupted around him, confusing the drones and drawing their attention. One drone hovered too close. Derek raised his shotgun and fired, the blast echoing through the forest. The drone shattered, its pieces falling like deadly confetti. But the noise had drawn even more drones his way. "Come on, you metal freaks!" he shouted, running deeper into the forest. The sabotage. At the spire's base, Elaine and Leah worked feverishly. Leah's fingers flew over the laptop keyboard, streams of alien code cascading across the screen. "Almost there," she muttered, her voice tight with concentration. Elaine planted the explosives with practiced efficiency. The charges blinked red, indicating they were armed. She glanced at Leah. "How much time do you need?" "Just a few more seconds," Leah replied, her voice trembling. "This encryption is insane." Suddenly, the ground shook as the spire emitted a deep, resonant hum. The glyphs on its surface pulsed brighter, and the air grew heavy. "They know we're here," Elaine said. "Hurry!" A drone broke through the perimeter, its searchlights slicing through the foliage. Elaine grabbed her rifle and took aim, firing a burst of shots. The drone spiraled out of control, crashing into a tree. "Done!" Leah shouted. "The link is set. Let's move!" Elaine activated the timer on the explosives. "We've got 60 seconds. Go!" The escape. Leah and Elaine sprinted toward the extraction point, dodging roots and branches as the forest erupted with activity. Behind them, drones swarmed the spire, their mechanical voices emitting high-pitched warnings. Derek appeared from the shadows, panting but unscathed. "Nice of you to wait for me," he quipped, falling in step beside them. "Don't get comfortable," Elaine said. "We're not out of this yet." They reached the extraction point, a hidden cave system leading to an underground river. As they dove into the entrance, the spire erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave tore through the forest, sending debris and drones flying in every direction. The ground shook violently, and a blinding green light filled the sky. The trio scrambled deeper into the cave as the river carried them away from the blast zone. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the sound of rushing water and their ragged breaths. Aftermath. As they emerged from the cave into the moonlit night, the group paused to catch their breath. The spire was gone, replaced by a smoldering crater. The alien glyphs in the surrounding area had dimmed, their energy severed. Elaine looked at the others, her face lit by a faint, weary smile. "One down, a few hundred to go." Leah laughed, a sound tinged with relief and exhaustion. "Hey, we've got momentum now." Derek surveyed the horizon, where the faint outline of another spire loomed. "This was just the beginning," he said. "But at least now, we've got a fighting chance."